Hi, I'm Dan, this is at Midlife Crisis Motorcyclist, and this is the Voge DS900X I'm going to be running for the next few months to try and get to the bottom of the question of, is this more than just a cheap Chinese bike, and is it actually, any good? Now, if you've been watching the channel previously, you'll have seen me review this bike from the launch, so I won't repeat all the kind of chapter and verse about technical specs and all that kind of thing. If you need to catch up, click the link on that. But let's just have a quick front to back overview of what we're dealing with here. So the Voge, as I say, is Chinese built by a parent company called Lonsin, which also builds the engines for BMW. And the 895cc twin at the heart of this bike is shared with the F900 GS. Hold that thought, we'll be coming back to that in a second. So the pricing starts at a pretty astounding £9,000 or £9,199 on the road, and it includes an awful lot of kit as standard. So let's just say go front to back and have a look at what we get. So you have 21-inch, 17-inch wheels in the kind of classic adventure bike style. There, as you can see, wired and tubeless as well. We've got Brembo brakes, we've got KYB forks. I think they're about 200mm of travel. They're fully adjustable for preload, compression, rebound. We've got little fog lights here, we've got LED lights, we've got a little dash cam here which records footage of what's going on. We've got a variable height screen, we have heated grips, we've got engine protection bars, we've got a TFT screen with full kind of phone connectivity and nav, things like that. We've got a heated seat, we've got cruise control, we've got radar blind spot alerts, we've got a quick shifter, shock at the back, also KYB, that's got some hydraulic adjustment for preload there, and it's also got rebound adjustment as well. Anything I've missed? No, I think that's pretty much it, apart from the fact we've also got a full set of luggage for the back here, so panniers and top box, which is probably going to be very useful as we go on, although I haven't quite decided on the best configuration yet. Pannier is going to be quite useful for stashing stuff on the commute. Top box, maybe more practical in terms of filtering and things like that, but I think top boxes maybe look a bit dorky, I don't know. I'll have to decide on that, but you can at least take them on and off pretty quickly, so I can configure the bike to the way I want it to look and what I'm going to be doing. In terms of that, I'm going to be riding the bike to work from this side of the Pennines in Yorkshire to the other side in Manchester. That's a nice mixed commute of kind of town riding, a bit of motorway, a bit over the top across the moors. So riding this bike over the winter through those kind of conditions is going to be a really good test of the quality, the fit and finish, whether it stands up, whether it's reliable, all that kind of stuff. The kind of the big unknowns that kind of hang over the bike that, while it impresses with its price and might tempt people because of that, from a brand that doesn't really have any track record, that will be the big question mark people have over it. So hopefully something we'll be able to answer in the coming months. Now that price is of course probably going to be a major talking point as we go, because coming back to that BMW F900 GS I mentioned at the start, if you were to equip that bike with all the kit that you get on this one, although the BMW starts, I think it's over 11 grand, around that kind of mark, has a little bit more power, but if you were to put all the stuff that the Voge includes as standard on the F900 GS, as I said in that first video, it would cost nearly double what this bike costs. So that's a massive selling point, and also it undercuts things like the Suzuki V-Strom 800D, which you might consider as a rival, pretty much everything else in the market. But again, come back to that point, that's all meaningless if the bike doesn't prove to be reliable, doesn't still scrub up well after a winter of commuting. Anyway, so that's a bit about the bike and how I'm going to be using it. Probably the best thing to do now is to go for a bit of a ride to refresh my memory about what it's actually like on the road. Okay, so welcome back to the Voge DS900X, not 900DSX, at least not anymore. And it's been, what, a couple of months now since I first rode it, and it's very interesting to get back on because although I may be new to reviewing motorbikes, I've been reviewing cars now for a long time, and it's always very interesting, I find, coming back from having ridden a bike or driven a car on the launch event to then having a go in your own time on roads that you know, having had time to kind of digest your thoughts. Launches are great and everything, but there's a lot going on a launch. You're riding to somebody else's timetable, you might be riding on familiar roads, so I'm always struck by how different it feels when you get time to yourself. And let's face it, in this regard, I'm going to have plenty of time on this bike, a few months, to kind of really drill down in both what it's like to ride and also what it's like as an ownership proposition. I hope that's going to be useful for anyone watching this who's been maybe tempted by the Voge in terms of its price and what it offers, but maybe thinking, well, but what's it going to be like to live with? Is it as well made, well finished as those kind of big name rivals that I might be considering? So yeah, I hope this shared experience is going to be useful. Now, what we're riding into here, although it might not look especially lifestyle, it is at least an honest kind of depiction of the kind of usage the bike is going to be getting, because this is literally a road that I use on my commute, and these conditions are likely pretty representative of the kind of conditions I'm going to be riding the bike in. So this is a pretty honest representation of what the bike will be doing for the next few months, if not especially evocative in terms of the views. There we go. It does at least give me a chance to try out some of the different engine modes that I didn't on the launch event. So let's look at that engine actually, so because it is one of the big talking points for the bike, given that it's the thing that it shares with that BMW F900 GS. And having got back on the bike, I'd say those first impressions do kind of ring true. It's maybe a bit ruder than I remember, at least at low speed. It's got quite a nice bark when you fire it up, so that's nice. But I stand by my view that it's not an engine that's going to win any awards for its inspiring soundtrack or its charisma, but then it's a modern parallel twin, so maybe apart from the Suzuki engine that's in the V-Strom, which is surprisingly nice for a modern parallel twin, it's not particularly charismatic, but then very few of the engines in its rivals are either, so I'm not going to use that as something to criticise the bike for. It is what it is. And in terms of power, it's down a little bit on the BMW as well, but it doesn't feel underpowered by any stretch. It feels like it's got a good response. We've got 4 rider modes to choose from: an Enduro one for off-road, which disables the rear ABS, and the normal kind of rain, road and sport. I'm going to say that in the usual way of things, I've got it in rain right now because the roads are pretty grotty. Road feels about right, sport just seems to kind of make the throttle really snatchy and unpleasant, so I expect most of the time I'm going to be riding around in road just because that's what it defaults to and that's what it feels most comfortable in. One thing that's interesting, having now ridden the bike on these roads that I know very well, I know pretty much every bump, I'm going to say that maybe the back end feels a little bit wallowy over some of these bumps, going, so
and perhaps the front end feels a little bit stiff, certainly in comparison anyway. So I think probably one of the first things I'll be looking at will be to maybe play with some of the settings on the suspension. That's one of the beauties of running a bike as a long term. You've got a bit more time to kind of mess about with stuff like that. So I think I'll maybe stiffen up the rear end a little bit, or maybe put a bit more rebound on it, maybe both, just to kind of see how that feels. And I'll perhaps take a bit of preload off the forks just to see what that does, and maybe balance the bike out a little bit. That does still sound a bit kind of technical for a newbie rider. I will point out I come from long time having ridden mountain bikes, and actually the suspension on mountain bikes, it's pretty complex even compared to what you get on motorbikes. So, you know, I'm fairly used to fiddling about with compression, rebound, things like that. So, and that's one of the beauties of the Voge, that the KYB forks and shock have a lot more adjustment in them that you'll get on most of the rivals. I don't think, maybe the Tenere, but most of the other bikes don't have any adjustment beyond preload on the back. So the fact there's a lot of adjustment in the bike and I can have a bit of a play around with that is one of the advantages of, one of the privileges of running it as a long-term test bike. So I shall report back on that in the next video. What else can I tell you? Well, I think the riding position is nice and comfortable. I've done the commute once on it already. It feels very, in that kind of adventure bike way, tall and upright. I've got the screen, good view of the road ahead and through the traffic and things like that. I was talking about what setup I'm going to use with the panniers and the top box and things like that. I think probably panniers make filtering a little bit more difficult, so I'll probably not ride with them, but we'll see how we go. But things like the heated grips and the cruise control and the heated seats and all that kind of thing, I think once the weather does turn properly, I'm going to find those very welcome indeed. So I think it's going to be a great winter commuter bike in that respect. But of course, the great unknown is how it's going to stand up to that in terms of kind of the fit and the finish and the reliability and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see. Also be an opportunity to kind of fiddle around with the connected elements of the screen and things like that, the navigation, those kind of things. So actually living with the bike is hopefully going to be an interesting experience that we could share. So an interesting experience for me, and hopefully an interesting experience for you if you're looking at this bike and wondering how it does measure up with some of those kind of establishment rivals that you might also be considering. So yeah, these first impressions, well, second impressions really, because I've already ridden the bike, but first impressions of a bike that I'm actually living with, again, pretty favourable. Fast, comfortable, well equipped, lots of stuff to fiddle with as we go down the line. So yeah, I'm pretty hopeful this is going to be a really interesting long-term test, and I look forward to bringing you more impressions from life with the Voge in due course.
So we are an interesting first ride out on the Voge I'll be running for the next few months, and I think in some ways it kind of raises as many questions as it answers from the previous ride, and I'll be really looking forward to having the opportunity to explore some of those over the coming months. Things like fiddling about with the suspension, testing out the luggage, getting to grips with the connected features on the screen like the navigation and the kind of app support that I've got, trying out all the different rider modes, all the different features that the bike has. So it's going to be, as I say, a really great opportunity to kind of get to know the bike and hopefully share some of those experiences with you, because it's been great to see the amount of interest this bike has created, going by the number of views and comments that my previous video on it has had. Thanks to everybody who's watched it and commented thus far. As I say, there's clearly an appetite to learn more about the bike because the price is very attractive, the features look good, but I think anybody looking at this bike and comparing it with its rivals will see it as an unknown quantity. So hopefully the next few months will shed a bit of light on what it's actually like to live with. To those ends, if you do have any questions about the bike or things that you want me to try out or explore, then just hit me up in the comments thread below the video. I'll endeavour to try those out and explore them in future updates. And to that end, of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Hit the bell for notifications of when those new videos on this bike and all the others I'll be riding in the coming months go live. And for the meantime, I'll say thanks for watching, goodbye, and ride safe.